Hello all. Today we are going to discuss how to compose formal reports. Specifically, we are going to gain an understanding of how to format a formal report, discuss the connection between the sourced topic sentence outline and the formal report, and quickly review the construction of paragraphs in business documents and the incorporation of research. In our last lecture, we discussed how the pre-writing process is more complex for formal reports and necessitates the creation of topic outlines, sourced topic outlines, and sourced topic sentence outlines. While these pre-writing steps can be time-consuming, after we have created the sourced topic sentence outline, the most difficult elements of the report are really finished. We know its organization, the research that we will be using, and the specific arguments that we will make. All that is left is to actually write the report. While we will discuss the connection between our sourced topic sentence outline and the creation of paragraphs later in this lecture, let's begin by examining the format of a formal report. The formal report will begin with a title page. On this page, we will first have the title of the report. This title should be center aligned and roughly in the middle of the page. It should also be no more than 12 words long. We will then have a double space, after which we will include your name. Finally, we will include the name of the hypothetical company for which we work. Additionally, at the top of each page, we will include a header. This header will provide the title of the report in all caps, and will then provide the page number. This header should be present on all the pages of the report. Once we have properly formatted our title page, we will then move on to the second page of the report. The second page of our report will be the letter or memo of transmittal. If we are writing a report for a company in which we work, we will write a memo of transmittal, as we have here. If we are writing a report for another company, we will create a letter of transmittal. The only difference between the two documents is the formatting. In the Common Business Documents lecture, we discussed how to formally format letters. Please consult that lecture if you have any questions about business letter formatting. As far as the content of the transmittal document, we should provide similar information to what we included in the introduction of our informal report. Before we examine the content of each paragraph, let me quickly read through this memo of transmittal. As I read, pay close attention to the type of information that is being discussed within each paragraph. The attached report, requested on behalf of H&R Block's Vice President, details the most pertinent modifications made to the Internal Revenue Code through the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Many of these changes require clients and paid preparers alike to plan and adapt for the 2018 filing season. This report was designed to examine how the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act will affect H&R Block's clients and is divided into 3 sections. 1. The changes that are most relevant to individual filers. 2. How these changes are likely to affect filers. And 3, recommendations that H&R Block can implement to ensure its clients are adequately prepared for these changes. The research for this report was gathered from academic journals, certified public accountants, and economists. Information relating to the nuances of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was taken from governmental websites, as well as the latest publications of the IRS. Together, these sources provide guidance for how individuals can plan accordingly for the changes that will take effect in 2018. It would be my pleasure to meet with you and discuss the contents of this report and the resulting actions that our company may take. Thank you for allowing me to prepare this report. Within the first paragraph, the author clearly identifies 1. Who requested the report, 2. The purpose of the report, and 3. Why the information of this report is important. By providing this information immediately within the transmittal document, the reader has the basic information he or she needs to understand the context of this report. This brings us to the second paragraph. Here, the author identifies the broad structure of the report. By including an outline of the main topics that we will discuss, we begin to establish a roadmap by which our reader can navigate the document. At this point, it is important that we only broadly indicate the report's structure. If we mention more than 3 or 4 of the main sections, our reader may become bogged down in the detail. At this point, we merely want to indicate the direction that he or she will be heading. Next, we will provide a fairly detailed discussion of where our research came from. As we noted in our informal report lecture, reliable information is extremely important, and if we do not have good research, our report is useless. Therefore, within formal reports, we must provide our reader with an overview of the type of research that we have conducted. If we have used reliable scholarly sources, we will be able to indicate that here and thereby lend credibility to our findings. Finally, we will end the letter or memo of transmittal with a closing that indicates our willingness to discuss the report further and that thanks the reader for his or her time. The letter or memo of transmittal should also be fairly brief. After we have included all this information, we should make sure that this document is no more than 1 page long. In conclusion, the memo or letter of transmittal is a very broad introduction to the report. By giving contextual information, providing the broad outline of the report, and indicating the type of research that was conducted, we can lay a firm foundation from which the rest of the report can be understood. This brings us to the third page of the report, the table of contents. Within the table of contents, we should list the starting page for each section of the report, including headings and subsections, beginning with the letter or memo of transmittal. Additionally, if you use any figures or charts, we should include them separately at the end of the table of contents. The next section of the report will be the executive summary. The executive summary provides a fairly comprehensive but brief overview of the report's content. This section should provide summaries of the most important elements that are discussed within the report. Think of this as an abstract, only in business format. After reading this document, the reader should know all the major arguments and recommendations of our report. One way to ensure that we are adequately representing the content of the report is to have bullet points for each of the major sections. After each bullet point, mention the specific topic in bold, and then provide a summary of that section's findings. In other words, provide the main conclusions that you arrive at within each section. It is important that we keep these summaries as concise as possible while still providing all the necessary information that our reader needs. When we have finished writing the executive summary, it should be no more than 1 page long. By summarizing the main findings of our report, the executive summary not only caters to busy business professionals, but also improves our reader's comprehension of the report by front-loading the report's conclusions. If our reader knows the central arguments that we will be presenting, he or she will then be able to focus more on the specific information that the report provides within the body paragraphs. After our executive summary, we finally arrive at the actual content of the report. The first section of the report itself will be the problem section. Within this section, we will first provide what the report examines and then present a bulleted list of either the central questions that the report seeks to answer or concise statements of the problems that the report examines. Providing this information clarifies the purpose of our report for our reader. Within this example, it is clear that the report is examining the changes that have been made to the Internal Revenue Code as a result of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and that it is going to examine 1, what the most significant changes are, 2, how these changes will affect filers, and 3, what H&R Block can do to prepare their employees and clients for these changes. Unsurprisingly, these questions correlate with the progression of the report itself, which first examines the changes that occurred to the tax code, then discusses the effects that these changes may have, and finally ends with a recommendation of what H&R Block should do. Once we have finished writing the report, it is often beneficial to return to the problem section to examine whether or not we have addressed the topics mentioned in these bullet points. If our report is properly structured, it should fulfill the purposes laid out in this section. After the problem section, we must then provide some background information on our topic. Within our informal report, the first body paragraph was dedicated to providing the context surrounding the issue examined within the report. Within the formal report, the background section discusses similar information. The only difference is that our formal report deals with more complicated issues. Therefore, we should have multiple paragraphs within our background section. Here, the author has provided several paragraphs that examine the context surrounding the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Within the first paragraph, he begins with a miniature introduction that broadly discusses how the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is relevant to taxpayers. Then, within the rest of the paragraph, he broadly discusses the importance of this act and why it is significant for H&R Block. The purpose of this mini introduction is to give the reader some footing to stand on before providing more specific contextual information within the rest of the background section. Next, the author realized that the timeline associated with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act is important. This section discusses when the law was passed, when it will take effect, and when the changes are scheduled to phase out. All of this information is important contextually, and taxpayers must know it before proceeding to the specific changes that the law has enacted. Additionally, when we examine this section, we will see that the author is using category headings to accentuate the structure of the report. By placing the bolded word background in the center of the document, the author indicates that this is a first-level heading. The author then places the word timeline on the left side of the document, indicating that it is a second-level heading, or in other words, that the timeline section is a subsection of the background. The author then proceeds to the second subsection of the background portion of the report, macroeconomic outlook. Again, we know that this is a subsection of the background because the heading is left aligned and separated from the rest of the text. After this paragraph, the author then moves on to the next major section of the report, which he indicates through the use of a first-level heading. From this point on, the sections of the report will differ depending on your specific topic. Please note that it is rare to begin a new paragraph without also providing a category heading for that paragraph. Reports can have first, second, third, and even fourth level headings, meaning that we can delve fairly deeply into the nuances of a topic before we may need to provide multiple paragraphs underneath the same section heading. For instance, later within this particular report, the author provides us with a second-level heading, and then provides us with two third-level headings after that paragraph. For third-level headings, we have the heading left aligned and bolded, but we will then follow the heading with a colon and immediately begin the paragraph on the same line. For fourth level headings, we will keep the same format, but italicize the heading, as is shown here with exemptions. By providing our reader with a category heading when we create a new paragraph, we make it easier for him or her to follow the information provided within the report. Hopefully, we can now better understand why creating outlines is crucial during the pre-writing process for a formal report. If we know what the sections of our report will be and how these sections are related to each other, we can replicate this structure easily within the formal report itself. In addition to helping us with the structure of our report, the sourced topic sentence outline also provides us with a skeleton structure for our paragraphs. Let's take a look at the exemptions paragraph and compare it to our sourced topic sentence outline. Here we have the entry from our sourced topic sentence outline for this particular paragraph. As you can see, this entry alone provides us with a significant portion of the paragraph's information. If we have constructed our sourced topic sentence outline thoughtfully and carefully, we should already have the topic sentence for this paragraph, as well as the evidence that we need to support this topic sentence's argument. Remember that it is possible and suggested to have 2 pieces of evidence per paragraph if you are trying to prove the validity of an opinion or argument. This paragraph, however, is merely examining the fact that personal exemptions have been eliminated under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Therefore, no additional evidence is required. As we have previously discussed, after providing a topic sentence and evidence, we then need to analyze and apply that evidence to our specific situation. Since the author does not need additional evidence, he has provided an in-depth explanation of the information provided by Sahadi. Specifically, the author walks the reader through how the elimination of this exemption might leave some families with significantly more taxable income than in the past. This elaboration takes the evidence and applies it to the specific purpose of this report. Finally, the author concludes the paragraph by explaining why this information is important to the company. H&R Block needs to consider how this change might affect the taxable income of clients with larger families. Remember, our concluding sentences should always clearly indicate how the paragraph's information relates to the purpose of the report. By creating a sourced topic sentence outline, we should already have the topic sentences and evidence that we need for our paragraphs. All that remains is to analyze and apply our evidence, transition to any additional evidence if we have it, present that evidence, and then, once again, analyze and apply the second piece of evidence to our specific situation. Finally, we will add a concluding sentence to the paragraph. This structure should be used for every body paragraph of the report. As you can see, this author next discusses Schedule A items before proceeding on to other miscellaneous changes such as the healthcare mandate and child tax credit. The author then discusses the effects that these changes will have on clients, specifically focusing on the effect to families and those who used to itemize deductions. At the end of the body, the author provides his recommendations and conclusions. Remember, while the analysis provided within the body paragraphs is vital, the ultimate purpose of the report is to provide clear findings or recommendations. For a formal report, the recommendation section will more than likely be multiple paragraphs. If the findings were obvious or if there were an easy solution, we would not be writing a formal report on the topic. Therefore, be sure that you have given due diligence to this final section of your report by providing specific and applicable direction for the company. Once the reader has finished reading these paragraphs, he or she should have a clear understanding of how the business should proceed regarding this issue. Finally, once we have provided all of our recommendations and concluded the report, we should then include our references page at the end of the document. Remember that the references should begin on their own page, or in other words, do not begin your references on the same page as your conclusion. Additionally, our references should be in alphabetical order, single-spaced with a double space between entries, and each entry should have a hanging indent for the second and subsequent lines. For more information about creating a references page or citing these sources within the report itself, please review the Research and Citation lecture. In reality, there are only two differences between informal and formal reports. First, the formatting of the reports differs. While an informal report merely has an introductory paragraph, the formal report has a title page, letter or memo of transmittal, a table of contents, and an executive summary. The second and most important difference is the length. Formal reports deal with more complicated issues and are therefore significantly longer than informal reports. Because of their greater complexity, it is important to properly organize the topics of our formal report and that these topics are clearly indicated using category headings. Aside from these two differences, the remaining elements of the report remain the same. We will still create paragraphs that are no more than 12 lines of text long. These paragraphs will still possess topic sentences, evidence, analysis and application, and a conclusion. Similarly, we will also continue to cite our sources through the use of a references page and through in-text citations within our paragraphs. Overall, if we have diligently planned the structure of this document during the pre-writing process, the actual composition of the report should proceed relatively smoothly.